Norman Fleury in Dishnikashun, St. Lazare, Doshchin, Saskatoon, Neweekin. So we say, my name is Norman Fleury, I'm from St. Lazare, Manitoba. I live in Saskatoon. Our indigeneity is because of our First Nations side. That's how we come under Section 35. And there's First Nations, Métis and Inuit. We have to let the Inuit tell their stories. We have to let the First Nations people tell their stories about their societies, about the dances, about the songs and the ceremonies. Those are the same things as we have as Métis, as Michifs. We built our own distinction. We're not First Nation, we're not European. We are our own people with our own distinction. That's what we have to talk about. We have war songs, we have wedding songs, we have ceremonial songs. Your culture, your stories, your legends, your mythology, your flag stories, your resistances. We have all those things as a people that we built for ourselves. Michif is a nationality because people will say, I'm a Michif. You have to define that. When you have somebody that'll speak, Moi, je suis un Michif, puis je parle français. I'm a Michif, and I speak French. And this is where that word Michif actually comes from France. Because when that baby was born, the first baby that was the offspring of French voyageur and a First Nation person, they looked at this baby and this Frenchman said, oh, ça c'est un Métif. Métif in French means mix. And we Michifies that word. It became Michif. The people that from St. Lazare, they said les Métis. And that's M-E accent aigu T-E-S. For us, that word Métis, it was okay, but sometimes we were called that in a derogatory way. Les mots Michif, les mots Métis, you know. So we preferred our own way, Michif. We were les Michif. And not everybody is les Michif. There's some people that call themselves half-breeds, and they're actually of Scottish descent, English and Irish and Soto and Cree. They had a language called Bungi. Bungi means a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's a word from the Soto language. And they were Protestant. And they had communities like in Manitoba, like St. James, St. Andrews. And there was a premier by the name, his name was Norquay. He was a half-breed. We're just learning to write our language, and there's been writing systems. When the first ever dictionary was built in Belcourt, North Dakota by Pateline Laverdure and Ida Rose Allard and a linguist by the name of John Crawford. And that was the first ever attempt in the world to write our language, Michif. It was going to be expressed and exposed as a written language. And before that, it was all oral culture where you spoke Michif to Michifs only. And when I spoke to a Frenchman, I spoke French. If I spoke to somebody that's a Soto, I spoke Soto. When I spoke to someone that was Cree, I spoke Cree. Anishinaabe, Nihiawewin, Le Français. Those are all the different languages that we learned as Michifs because we were people that were multicultural because of our relationships and our relatives. Our genealogy is predominantly Michif that has Soto and Cree, and then it also has Gros Ventre and Assiniboine. Our language, Michif, was a family language, a ceremony language. It was also a trade, commercial language, because those are the territories that we traveled on when we went on buffalo hunts. When the Crow, the Gros Ventre, different nations came together, the language Michif was used on the plains to say, okay, well, we're going to shoot now. Kamachi nan, we'll hunt now. Kayamiha nan pitama, we'll pray first. You see, it was always in prayer. Everything was done in prayer. And on the buffalo hunt, there was always a priest if they could come along on that buffalo hunt. And we had our own old people that we relied on that worked with the priests. To go on a buffalo hunt was a hard task. My grandmother told me stories that when her parents were on that buffalo hunt, there were maybe 1,000 buffalo running horse. And then you had your carts, and then you have to have them in a certain position. There were so many people on that hunt that when that first cart was camped and already had their meal, the last cart was coming in. That's how many people there were in that buffalo hunt. And it was well strategically planned. It was structured because it had been done for years, so you followed that process. And then you sold those hides, and there was the pemmican trade, going to forts. When you traveled, you didn't have time to make a big meal, so you ate pemmican. The people at home that couldn't go on that buffalo hunt had little farms. So the old people used to keep the chickens, the hogs, and the cows. They took care of. And I remember the old people at home, they used to make things called litoro. It was like you mix tallow and berries and ligorton, and they called them, those are pork puffs, as they call them today, in a bag now in a store. That came all from that creation of our ancestors, dried meat. And they dried berries. I remember my grandmother putting a canvas on the la hangar, on a little building that we had, and she'd pour her Saskatoons there, and they'd dry up like raisins. And in the winter time, she took some, put it in the water, they'd puff up, and we'd have pie, you know. So we have quite a life. It wasn't French, it wasn't First Nation, it was the Michif way.